Hey, welcome. If you're on the path to becoming a flight instructor, then consider this your toolkit for really mastering the science of learning. And this is a huge part of your FAA practical test. Believe me, this isn't just some dry theory. It's the absolute foundation of everything you're going to do in the cockpit. So let's get into it. Just think about that for a second. I mean, pretty much anyone can memorize a checklist, right? But what's the real difference between a student who just knows the steps and a pilot who has truly mastered a skill? It's that whole journey from simply repeating information to making it a complete instinct. And that journey, well, that's the learning process. And understanding it is your secret weapon as an instructor. Okay, so before we can even think about teaching somebody else, we have to start with the most basic question there is. What exactly is learning? And this isn't some philosophical debate. For the FAA, it has a very, very specific meaning. And this is it. This is the core definition. Learning isn't just about cramming your head full of facts. No, it's an observable, measurable change in how someone acts. And this is the important part, it comes directly from experience. As an instructor, you're the architect of those experiences. You are literally in the business of changing behavior. So how does this change actually happen? Well, there are two main theories. You've got behaviorism, which is that classic carrot approach, rewarding good performance to reinforce it. Then you have the cognitive theory, which dives a lot deeper. It focuses on what's going on inside the student's mind, those aha moments of understanding. Now, as modern instructors, we don't just pick one. We blend both, rewarding progress while making sure we're building genuine understanding in our students. All right, so if learning is our goal, then the laws of learning are basically the rules of the game. And these aren't just suggestions, okay? They are fundamental principles that dictate how well your student is going to absorb information. Mastering these is absolutely non-negotiable if you want to be an effective instructor. And here they are. You can remember them with the acronym REPIRE. That's readiness, exercise, effect, primacy, intensity, and recency. So, readiness. Is your student actually ready and motivated to learn? Exercise. You gotta practice, plain and simple. Effect. A positive, successful experience really cements the lesson. Primacy. This one is huge. Get it right the first time, because first impressions really, really stick. Intensity. A real crosswind landing is way more memorable than a textbook drawing. And finally, recency. The maneuver you just did is going to be the freshest thing in their mind. You will use these laws in every single lesson you plan. Let's just pause on primacy for a second because it is so critical. Unteaching a bad habit is, I swear, 10 times harder than just teaching a good one from the very beginning. This is why we are so meticulous about demonstrating maneuvers correctly the very first time. Remember, what you teach first sticks. Now, it's really important to get that learning isn't just one big monolithic thing. We can actually break it down based on what is being learned and how deeply it's being understood. So let's dive into that. First up, the 3 domains. You have the cognitive domain, that's all about thinking and knowledge, like learning airspace rules. Then you've got the affective domain, which covers feelings, attitudes, and values. This is where good judgment and aeronautical decision-making, or ADM, live. And finally, the psychomotor domain. That's the physical doing part, like actually flying a steep turn. A truly great lesson, it probably touches on all 3. And this pyramid brilliantly illustrates the journey to real mastery. A student starts at the bottom with rote memorization, just repeating facts back to you. Then they move up to understanding. They actually get the why behind it. After that comes application, using the knowledge in a real situation. But the ultimate goal, the top of the pyramid, is correlation. That's when they can connect what they've learned to brand new situations. This pyramid is your roadmap for every single student's progress. So, we've talked about the theory. Now, let's get practical. How does a student actually go from fumbling around with the controls to executing a perfect short field landing without even thinking twice? Well, it's a very well-defined path. Every physical skill is built in these 3 stages. First is the cognitive stage, where they're just trying to remember the sequence. Okay, it's pitch, then power, then trim. Next up is the associative stage. Here, they're practicing, they're making connections, and they're starting to catch their own mistakes. Your job is to guide them through this. And finally, they reach the automatic response stage. The skill is now muscle memory, which frees up their brain to manage other crucial tasks, like looking for traffic. Now, somewhere in that middle associative stage, your student is going to hit a wall. It's called a learning plateau, and progress just seems to grind to a halt. It's really frustrating for them, but listen, it is a completely normal part of the process. Your job is to reassure them, keep them practicing, and let them know that a breakthrough is just on the other side. Of course, none of this skill building matters if the student can't remember it for the next lesson. And that brings us to the brain's filing system, memory. As an instructor, you're not just a teacher, you're helping your student file away information so they can pull it out when it really counts. So information basically flows through 3 stages. It starts in the sensory register. That's just what we see, hear, and feel. The important bits get moved to working memory. But here's the absolute key. To get that information into long-term memory, it takes rehearsal and coding. In short, practice. The more a student practices and connects new information to stuff they already know, the more likely it is to be stored permanently. And just as important as knowing how memory works is knowing why it fails. We forget because we don't use the information. That's fading. Use it or lose it, right? Or maybe other information gets in the way. That's interference. And sometimes it's just a retrieval failure. That classic, it's on the tip of my tongue problem. Understanding these things helps you build lessons that actually fight against forgetting. Okay, so let's pull all this together and see how it works in the real world, inside the cockpit. This is where we apply all that theory to practice, where we deal with the inevitable errors, and where we try to achieve the ultimate goal of instruction. When we're talking about practice, it turns out not all practice is created equal. You have blocked practice, doing steep turns over and over and over. It looks great in the short term, but the research is crystal clear. Random practice, mixing up steep turns with slow flight, with stalls all in one session, that leads to way better long-term retention. It forces the brain to retrieve and reload the skill each time, which makes it much more robust. And all of that brings us to the holy grail of teaching, positive transfer. This is it. This is why we're here. It's when learning one skill, like mastering slow flight, directly helps a student learn another totally different skill, like nailing a short field landing. We're not just teaching isolated maneuvers, we're building a foundation of skill that can be applied to any situation they might face. So here's your takeaway checklist. How do you make your teaching really stick? 1. Praise your students. It works. 2. Connect new ideas to things they already know. 3. Foster a positive attitude in the cockpit. 4. Engage all their senses. Let them see it, hear it, and feel the airplane. And 5. Use meaningful repetition. Not just mindless drilling, but practice that has a purpose. These 5 things will make you a more effective instructor, guaranteed. So we'll end on this thought. Your students will make mistakes. Hundreds of them. But an error is not a failure. It's just a piece of data. It's a bright, flashing sign showing you exactly where the learning process needs a little bit more reinforcement. Your job isn't to prevent every error, but to use them. So the real question is, how are you going to use that data to build a safer, more competent pilot?